What is linguistic diversity? Linguistic diversity is understood to be the proportion of different languages spoken within a given territory, which can be a country or a geographical region. In other words, a place where many languages coexist will have greater linguistic diversity or linguistic richness than another where only one is spoken. In the world there are linguistically very diverse regions, that is, in which many different languages are spoken. And generally these are geographically very broad regions or very remote in relation to the great historical centers of power and commercial exchange. This distribution is due to the fact that in the great empires the single language of the conquerors used to be imposed. And in regions of intense commercial and cultural exchange, lingua francas, common languages, emerged that ended up being imposed given their economic importance. In fact, the regions with the greatest linguistic diversity, at the beginning of the 21st century, are Papua New Guinea 832 spoken languages, Indonesia 731, Nigeria 513, India 400, Mexico 295, Cameroon 286, Australia 268 and Brazil 264. Although the vast majority of them unfortunately have very few speakers today. According to UNESCO, of the 7,000 languages spoken on the planet, 50% are at near risk of disappearance. Linguistic diversity tends to go hand in hand with cultural diversity. That is, with the coexistence of different cultures or cultural traditions in the same territory, and it is a trait that in general seeks to preserve as much as possible, so as not to impoverish the linguistic legacy of the inhabitants of a territory. The language is living history, after all. Characteristics of linguistic diversity. The characteristics of linguistic diversity are as follows. Many different languages are spoken in the same territory, that is, different languages, and not dialects of the same language. In general, it is considered a sign of cultural wealth and diversity, since languages are part of the cultural heritage of peoples. Over time it tends to disappear, to the extent that a single language is imposed for practical reasons. And also due to the power dynamics that are exerted around the language, for example, being taught in a language empowers a language. Schools, or used for formal paperwork. Despite the fact that it consists of the coexistence of several languages, generally one of the languages has predominance in official affairs of the state, or a greater historical prestige, especially in the former imperial colonies. Importance of linguistic diversity. As we have said before, linguistic diversity is a symptom of cultural plurality and complexity, that is, of cultural richness and an important legacy. For this reason, it is considered a historical baggage worth preserving. And this can only happen by keeping languages alive and giving them equal importance for day-to-day life and for bureaucratic and prestigious matters. The loss of linguistic diversity also means the loss of a unique point of view of the universe and a unique oral and imaginary tradition. So that it is always much more than the mere fact of a code to communicate. Examples of linguistic diversity. India is one of the geographical units with the greatest cultural and linguistic diversity. Some examples of regions rich in linguistic diversity are the following. Papua New Guinea. One of the megadiverse countries on the planet, and the country in which the most languages are spoken in the world, more than 800. Most of which are classified in the set of Papuan languages, typical of the Western Pacific Ocean, covering a diverse set of unique language families. It is also home to English, a language inherited for colonial historical reasons, and other hybrid languages between English, German and native languages, known as Unser Deutsch, our German, and Tok-Pisin. Nigeria. One of the largest and most important nations in West Africa and a former British colony, Nigeria is a linguistically diverse country. With more than 500 different languages, the vast majority of which are still alive. Most of them are languages of the Niger-Congo group, like Yoruba or Igbo, or Afro-Asian like Hausa, or Nilo-Saharan like Kanuri. English is also handled Pidgin or broken Creole language derived from English, and for officers and academics, British English. India. This is one of the largest and most populated countries on the planet, and also one of the cradles of civilization. where the Indus Valley culture emerged. After the entire African continent, it is considered the geographical unit with the greatest cultural, linguistic and genetic diversity on the planet. It is home to two gigantic families of their own languages. Indo-Aryans, 74% of the population, and Dravidians, 24% of the population, as well as other languages from the Austroasian and Tibetan-Burmese families. Linguistic diversity in Mexico. Mexico, the ancient cradle of Mesoamerican civilization, is also a good example of enormous linguistic diversity. Like the rest of the former Hispanic colonies in America, it handles Spanish as its official and majority language. But at the same time it preserves and claims its surviving pre-Columbian languages. Among the native languages still in use are Nahuatl, spoken by 1,725,000 people. Mayan, more than 859,000, Tzeltal, 556,000, Mixtec, 517,000, Tzotzil, 487,000, the Zapotec, 479,000, or the Otomi, 307,000, to mention only the most predominant. The indigenous languages of Mexico are disappearing, despite efforts to preserve them and to preserve their legacy. Independent of the Spanish culture imposed for 5 centuries and unique in the entire world. To that end, investments have been made in bilingual education for indigenous citizens, and ongoing campaigns are carried out to raise awareness of the tragic risk that the loss of these languages would represent for humanity.